Well, thank you everyone for making your time today. It's a Tuesday, Tuesday morning or Tuesday lunch for some of our friends joining us today from continental Europe. So we really appreciate that. I'm Verada. I'm the CEO and co-founder of FilmDoo and FilmDoo Academy. Really happy to have you here today. We have Julio, who's our FilmDoo in-house experts on corporate training, on diversity and inclusion training. And of course, we have our guest speaker today, which is Evelien Verschroeven, Belgian-based, a cultural anthropologist, as well as experienced and renowned corporate training. So I'd just love to give a very short background about FilmDoo and how we came to realize the potential and value of film in really helping people to learn, create empathies for other cultures, and of course now to really provide some really interesting insights in teaching complex multicultural issues or themes, and especially in areas where traditional textbook and learning, it hasn't been very effective. I'm just going to share a very short screen that tells you a little bit about who we are. So this is FilmDoo. Businesses and people through film and video. So specifically who we are. So we actually started off as a film distribution platform. We help people to discover great films from around the world, which is at FilmDoo.com. So consequently, we actually now have one of the world's largest international film catalogs. So we have a lot of films in French, in Dutch as well. Many will be very happy, but also a lot of films in, of course, English, but coming from Asia. We also have a very strong collection of African films, South African films. And so it's a really great place to discover independent voices, but most of all films that you otherwise wouldn't normally see because of the strong international focus. So how did we expand into online learning? It happened about just under 2 years ago, where we started to see that actually over 80% of people coming to FilmDoo were actually coming from language-related searches. So for example, I'm learning French, where can I watch French films? Or a Japanese learning blog would point their audience and users to FilmDoo to learn Japanese, which is very interesting. So we ran a survey to our users, and over 70% told us that the #1 reason they're actually watching a film on FilmDoo is they're learning a foreign language. So for us, that was really the moment, the lightning moment where, wow, what we've built is bigger. It's more than just an entertainment platform. We can really use films, and of course now expanded to video as well, to really help make a difference in learning, to improving learning engagement, to really teach more complex subjects, themes, cultural context that is often very hard to do in traditional textbooks or just reading an article, for example. But actually even in the area of corporate training, where historically training has been a little bit more, I wouldn't, dry or harder to access. By using films, videos, and games, you can really raise engagement, make it a lot more interesting. The trainees and the learners can really interact, can really appreciate the context. But most of all, the value of really film is that it has the power to create empathy for people and places we haven't been. And that's why it's so powerful, especially in the areas of multicultural communication, helping to build bridges across cultural and language divides, and of course, helping people to understand and relate to other people different from ours. And on that note, I'd love to hand us over today to Evelien, who is actually our expert in cultural anthropology, who'd love to do a little bit more about how the value of minimizing conflict can be really important using film and video. Over to Evelien.
Thank you, Verada. Hello, everybody. I'm Evelien Vershroven, indeed from Belgium, from Flanders, and I will try to introduce me in a short way. I'm an anthropologist. I studied also business communication and entrepreneurial and educational entrepreneurship, excuse me. And my specialties are learning communities and intercultural communication. So I have a lot of experience, had and have still a lot of experience in multicultural groups, and I will try to give you as much as possible examples from my own experience. I think that's the most touching of all. But when you say anthropology, business communication, educational entrepreneurship, that is quite different things, that there is a gap between them. It's surprising because there are a lot of similarities between it, and especially because I focus on the way I focus those things, and that is the focus on the individual, on the group, and on the relationships between individuals, between the individual and the group, between groups, but also between the individual, the groups, and the context. And that's what I really gonna take with us today. So, communication. This is a very simple model, and I think you all know this model of communication. You have a sender who is trying to transfer some information or communication or a message to a receiver. There are two main processes within this model, and that is the sender will encode or produce a message, and the receiver in its turn will decode or interpret a message. But the main question is, did the receiver understand the message well? And indeed, it's a simple model. And as humans, we like to use very simple models, and that's okay to understand reality, but you also have to be aware that the reality is much more complex. And if you forget that, that can become dangerous. Also for communication. So this is too simple. We go one step further now. Okay, you recognize the simple model here at the left of the slide. Now, in the process of encoding and decoding, we use different forms of communication. We all know that also. You have verbal communication, it can be spoken or written, but you also have a lot of non-verbal communication, and there are some examples here also at the right side of the slide. You have the body language, intonation, you have symbols and artifacts, which we use also to communicate a message or to transfer a message to somebody else or another group. Now, often, and the different forms of communication are also combined. For example, at the right side of the slide, you see clearly there is the verbal expression, but there is also on the top the intonation of somebody, or on beneath you see the words combined with the body language. So, and this can give the combination of two different kind of forms of communication can give an other message to the words or the who are used. One thing that's also important, and we all also know, it's the channels we use. The first thing that you think about is just the conversation, but more and more we use digital communication tools like email. We often say already mail because the electronic, we keep it away. You have text messages. We use also a lot of WhatsApp messages. And this one is interesting. Look at your own organization and think, do you use WhatsApp in your organization or in your corporate? Yes or no? And how do you use it? Well, I experienced last year, because I'm also teaching in a University of Applied Science, and I was working with a group of colleagues, and they used WhatsApp to communicate with each other, but they mixed up the formal and the informal communication. And it became really, I was confused. Sometimes I didn't get the information I wanted to get for something formal. So it's okay. There are a lot of corporates who today already use WhatsApp for formal communications, but there has to be strict rules. Then it's clear when you use which channel, and that's important. Now, I think we are going to play a first game. So I'm looking to Rada. Okay, thank you.
That's right. So in order to play this game and play along, we encourage you to use a second device. So what that means is that we will be watching the film or film clip on the screen share here. But if you have your phone or a tablet next with you or a different computer, you can play along and answer questions on your second device. That is often the best way to play such a game. So we're going to play the first one, which is, oh, sorry, can you allow me to screen share, please? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so in order to join, I'm putting it on the chat as well. You just have to type in your URL www.fdo.oo, and it will ask you for a room name. And the room name, I'm also putting it in the chat, is Drum. You can choose any nickname you liked, and we should be able to see you in the screen. We're gonna give a few minutes for people to join. A few seconds.
So it's like a gaming interactions over a film or video. And then once you join, you can see the avatar. A few people joining.
Again, just fdo.oo, oh, 3 O's, and then a room name that is Drum, D-R-U-M. And you should be able to join. So now we're in the waiting room, and when we start the game, you should see the video, but the questions should appear if you're on a secondary device, on your secondary device.
Let's wait, maybe 30 seconds for anyone else to join. Or if anyone is joining and they can't join, just give us a shout out to wait for you.
Yeah. And don't worry too much, because we have a second game coming, and you can still watch the video and see the questions on Verada's screen. So don't worry if you're not able to join. Send us a message on the chat if you have any technical difficulties. I might be able to help you.
Oh, brilliant. So on that note, we'll start a quick game. The faster you answer, the more points you get. And if you answer the questions wrong, you can, of course, answer again. So let me just make sure we have that. Just making sure we have everyone. And on that note, let's go.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes
You also have to pay attention. By his tone and body language, the sender of the message is. The faster you answer, the more points you get.
Again, you should also have the questions in your device and answer on the device.
That makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2, but no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Second question. How is the receiver showcasing lack of interest and empathy to the sender? Roar is overtaken. You can see it's quite fun with a lot of
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true, but the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes! not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
Next question. One of the ways, granted sarcastically, she engages in the conversation. Ah, we have a new second place person as well. Well done, John. And we can have over 50, 60 players at the same time. That's the final score. Just a very short game, but of course it can also be longer. Brilliant. This is just for the person to download the score for that attendees.
Back to you, Evelien.
Yes.
Back to you.
Yes. I really like the Big Bang Theory, and I thought also it is a well-chosen illustration of the verbal, non-verbal communication, etc. Even when people are from the same culture, so that's a nice one. Okay, WhatsApp. I was talking about WhatsApp before, to use it as a channel in your corporate or organization, yes or no. What we see is, and I'm going to talk now about symbols, is that the message applications like WhatsApp and WeChat and Signal, which you see here on the slide, they used a text balloon or a spook balloon. I don't know the right word. And that's internationally accepted. Everybody knows that's about messaging, text or voice. But I want to focus also on the thing like this application, these channels has changed also the form of communication. Before it was more used as a text message application, but more and more, I don't know if you see it also around you, people are walking in the street and talking like this. And they use more and more WhatsApp, WeChat as a voice message application. So that's a change also in also a little bit culture of the people, and a change of a form of communication that is used. Another symbol that is internationally well known is for email or mail. It's the envelope. We don't use the envelope anymore, but you see the main players of mailboxes still use it, like Google Mail, ProtonMail, and Outlook. ProtonMail, you see there's a little lock above the envelope, and that means that it's a secure email service. So it's more secure than Google Mail or Outlook. So that's a little bit about the symbols. I want to go back to the simple model of communication, and I said already that's more complex. And this one is a really important slide. If you take one thing away, it has to be this one with all the reference and related things, what I'm saying today. So you simply have the sender and the receiver, who are, the sender is trying to send the information, the message to the receiver, but at the background, we will say, of the sender and also of the receiver, there are variables who influence the process of encoding, producing the message, but also influence the decoding of interpreting the message. And we often are not aware. And what is the background? The background can be a lot of things. It can be the community, it can be the culture, it can be the work experience, or what he or she was doing last week, the mood, how he or she identify himself. So it becomes much more complex. You see, on both sides, you have those influences, and we often don't realize that other people has another background or framework, as we say, and we don't take the chance or the opportunity to check if we really understand what the sender is saying, or the sender doesn't take the opportunity to check if the receiver well understand the message, and if there are not translations who went wrong because of those frameworks backgrounds. Now, I experienced a beautiful example of this last year. I was teaching intercultural competences, and Edwin Hoffman, who is here, he will remember because he was one of my guest lecturers. And I was teaching that to a group of students from Europe, but there was a big group of students from Asia and a big group of students also from Africa. And at the end of the course, after a few weeks, they had to make an assignment, and they had to make a portfolio about the course. And the Asian students, they did it perfectly. They looked up external sources. They've written down reflections, what they think about it. You see, they really worked on it. And first of all, the African students, they didn't send any assignment. It took a long time. And then there were a few who sent the assignment in, and it was really a copy paste of what the theories and the models that I gave in my course. And this was really a miscommunication of me, because I didn't check well if they understand well the assignment. And I realized that in their educational system, until then, they were not confronted with the fact that they could reflect on it in a written way. I clearly say in a written way, because those African students, they reflected well, and they were really interactive during the course when we were online teaching. But to make it in an assignment, that was, you saw that it was not, they were not used. So that's a great illustration of the frameworks and your experience you have, how it can influence also the communication or miscommunications between people. Now, even if you talk the same question, there can be misunderstandings. There are a few here, but I only will take one out of the list. And it is a conversation between the British and the Dutch people. A British person who said, oh, or very interesting, the British person who said, very interesting. In fact, he means, I don't like it. But what does the Dutch understand? Oh, he's impressed. He thinks it is really, really, really interesting. So what happens here? In fact, the British people, they are much more, they have a much more indirect way of communicating. Yes? And we say also it's a high context culture. So for them, it's important the words they say and the words they don't say, and also the non-verbal communication they use. On contrary, the Dutch people, as a Belgian, I can say that they are really direct in the communication, really result-driven, and they have a low context culture. That means that they don't put as much importance on the non-verbal communication. So that is why here is this misunderstanding between the two of them. Yes? Okay, and now I have another one. We didn't spoke about the artifacts, and I like to use flowers to explain this. Why? Because everybody likes flowers, and we give it a lot as a gift, a present to other people. And in fact, this is also a really beautiful example of a combination of different forms of communication. We give an artifact, but often we say something, and also the context of the situation plays a role and makes it more clear what you want to say with giving the flowers to somebody. It can be thank you, it can be get well, it can be I love you, or happy birthday, it depends. So that's important. On the other hand, in different cultures, flowers and colors can have a specific meaning, and sometimes it's important to know. For example, in Russia, you cannot give yellow flowers because yellow flowers are related with funerals. In France, if you are in France and you give red roses to a woman, it's not done unless it is your wife or your lover. So be careful with artifacts, they also have a meaning. Huh? So now I think it's time for the second game.
Brilliant. So for those of you who just joined, as we have a few new people to join again, in order to play along, it's best that you play with a second device. So we'll be watching the film or video on this screen, and then we will be answering along on the phone, tablet, or a second laptop if you have one. I'm sharing screen again.
Same pathway, you just put on your URL fdo.ooo, but it's a different room name. And the room name is Tiger.
So go to your browser on your phone or tablet.
Be careful, it might be resending you to the previous room, so just make sure that it asks you for a different room name and you should be there.
All right, quite. All right then, and again, the faster you answer, the more points you get. If you get it wrong, you can answer again. Do we have everyone? We'll just give 30 seconds for anyone else who'd love to join. And you can, of course, just watch along as well. All right then, let's play again.
Learn about America. Now, it's all about bringing down the MPI. Things go faster if the customer feels they're talking to a native English. The customer's
So we had to pay attention a little bit. So.
pronunciation, their slang, small talk. Try to learn from them. Learn about America.
Sir,
Yes, you are?
man meat.
Oh, sorry.
Man, meat.
No, man meat. What I want to know is what is small talk?
Multiple choice, get ready. What are some errors in communication that are showcased here?
Oh, you know, it's like, so how you doing today? How's the weather in Arizona? You can talk about sports, like cricket. All right, never mind, forget sports. You want to sound American. If anyone asks where you're located, just say Chicago. All right? Try that. Chicago. Okay. When you make the ah sound, hold your nose to flatten the vowel, like Chicago. Chicago.
Okay.
So where was that film? Can we give a little bit of context? And apologies, the sound wasn't very good on when I screen shared that.
What did you say? I didn't hear it well.
Where can you explain where the film is from and why it was chosen?
Yes, it's an older film. It's from the 90s, I think, and it's about a businessman who had to go to India and to train the people who are in the service desk over there, working for the American corporation. But there are other nice examples of illustration of what we told before. For example, he used the word small talk, but small talk, it's the Indian people didn't understand, because again, it's the same like the British and the Dutch people. The Indian people are much more indirect, and they have a high context culture. So small talk, you always start a little bit to talk, and then you go to the reason why you want to communicate, and that's a big contradiction with the United States, where people are more direct and result driven. So that's one. The other one, who is also fun, there's a lot of fun illustrations also of non-verbal communication. You see that Indian lady who is really thinking, you're a moron or what? What are you doing? Are you joking with us? And on the other side, you have also that he said, yeah, small talk, you can talk about sports. And the Indian people said, oh yes, cricket. But cricket, it's so typical Indian. And I was in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka also, you see the children playing cricket, but in America, they don't play it. So it's also a cultural misunderstanding. So I think it's a fun video to illustrate even some more things about that. Yes. And about the context also. Okay, now I think it's really fun to illustrate this also with the films. So maybe it's a good exercise also if you are looking at some films or series to see and to think what's going wrong here. And especially those series, there's a lot of non-verbal communication also that's fun to analyze. But now we go a little bit again to the theory, and I will try to keep it as much practical as I can. In fact, if you are a leader in your organization, in your corporate business or in your corporate, these days you work more and more with multicultural teams, and if you want, you're not a superhero who knows everything about every culture. It's not possible. Yeah, but the importance is, like I told you in the slide, in the important slide, it's important to know, okay, what is my background? What's my framework? Yeah, but to measure in intercultural communication, we talk about cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence is the intelligence of somebody to understand another culture. And some universities made some tools to measure it. And they have 5 elements they will measure. And these are the ones. The first one I will talk about is meta-knowledge. That's framework. You really, if you understand that you are influenced by a lot of variables of your framework, about of your context, of your background, then if you know that, and you know that other people has the same thing, you can be more open and flexible, and you are also less afraid, I think, to ask questions to see, do I understand it? So it's really important. It's not always that easy, but it's important. The exercise that I use, and Carmen, who is here, she will remember also when we were studying, because she studied with me. I still remember that they said, no, if you listen to a story, you read a book, see who is the author, who is the sender, and what is typical, in which time the book, for example, is written. It has a lot of influence, like the little game. It's a film of the 90s. Yes, it's totally different when we would make it on the same subject a film today. Yes? So that's important. And to ask every time if you read something, what is the influence of the sender? What can be his background, and how can his background or her background influence the message? For example, I'm a white woman in her 40s. I studied anthropology. I have some business knowledge, but I'm not a hard businesswoman, and that influence also the way I talk about intercultural communication. In fact, I put a lot of focus also on the relations, and the relations between persons, and that's what I'm trying to giving you, to reflect on yourself, to see to others, and to work with those relations, also with the context which influence you. Yeah, that's a quite good illustration, I think. The second element you can measure is the cultural knowledge, and that's the knowledge you have of your own culture, but also of other cultures. A lot in the courses of intercultural communication, they use a lot the cultural iceberg, and you know, all an iceberg, and the top is seen. Everything what is beneath is not seen. So if you want to grow your cultural knowledge, you have to go a step further than just looking what you see. You need also to be curious, to ask questions. And curious to ask questions, we come to the third element, and that's the motivational attitude. You need really to be curious and asking questions, and especially this one, the motivational attitude, when they measure it, they will measure your self-reflection on your own and on your own culture. So that's also an important one. The fourth element is behavior. And I will take you all back to your childhood, when you were born and you were in your family as a toddler. How did you learn to behave in your own culture? There are two important learning methodologies, methods or strategies, and that's observation and asking questions. Right? You know, so why? Asking questions. And in fact, that is the same thing we do if we are in another culture. We observe and we ask questions, but then the focus is really on the other group. You're not comparing, you're just looking at the other group. Often in intercultural communication or competences courses, there are people who are using a lot of models, like the model of law and high context culture. It's good, but if you stay on this level, it can be a little bit anecdotal. We call those models also cross-cultural models. The danger, if you stay on this level and you will not reflect on yourself and not work with the meta-knowledge, the danger therefore is that anecdotal and fun facts can be really painful for the other group, and it can really block communication. So there will not be communication nor a relationship between people. Yes? And then last but not least, languages. Everybody, how many languages do you speak? 3, 4, 2? Okay. Do you see a level, the different levels? Yes, there are some languages that you speak better than others. Did you already reflect on yourself when you're speaking those 2 or 3 languages in a different level, how you behave? And if it's related with the knowledge you have of the culture. For example, I'm from Belgium. I'm from the north of Belgium, so I speak Dutch, but in the south is speaking French, and I speak also French. What I saw with self-reflection is when I'm speaking French, first of all, French is an indirect culture. Yeah? I use a lot more words. I even use much more nonverbal communication. And I put much more nuances in words, and the intonation is totally different in French. So but I really have a strong connection also with the French culture. We went often to France, and so, and it's true, when you feel the culture, you feel the language also. You speak it better. You have contact with the people. You can understand better. You speak a little bit slang, the language that people use. But it's also vice versa. If you know the culture, you will learn more about the language. And that's why also that FilmDoo, and there I make a loop again to the beginning of the webinar, that FilmDoo is a really nice tool to improve your language skills and cultural knowledge and cultural intelligence with that tool. So that's so I'm very thankful, and you really learn to feel the culture. Now to wrap up a little bit, so a lot of people, when they we are talking about intercultural communication, in fact, we don't study the culture of the other. The first step that you have to do is to reflect on your own and your own culture, and to realize that you have a framework that influence your encoding and decoding process in communication. And if you do that, and you realize and you're aware that the other person, the receiver, is also in a framework and has also these influences, try to be open and ask questions if you're not sure if the message is understood, or if you're not, if you didn't understand the message well. Yes. And last but not least, I will end, Edwin, if you are okay, with a great quote of Edwin Hofmann, and a great book also that he has written, and that's "Cultures don't meet, people meet." So people are important, and the relationships you have with people and with groups and with the context. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Evelien. Guys, we're on the Q&A portion and we're conscious of time, but if you have any questions, if you want to share your self-reflection, I know Carmen, thank you very much, Carmen. She mentioned the concept of double biasness. But yeah, feel free. I'm gonna run a poll, if you don't mind, just
Okay.
give you 5 questions. It will help us a lot. Should appear on your screen.
Short poll. Yeah.
Okay, maybe to react a little bit on the question of Carmen, double biases. Yes, I have seen this term in 2 different occasions, and the first one is that they say there's a double biases because of the different frameworks of the receiver and the sender. But on the other hand, sometimes people are overreacting. Because they are interested in culture and they use, in fact, those cross-cultural models of, for example, everybody knows it's for example, cultures who are defined as in power distance, for example, and they say, okay, he's from, I don't know, I say something, Belgium, and the power distance is there large. I say something, I'm not sure if it's true at this moment, but then you go and react already if you know it on this. So if you generalize those cross-cultural models, it can be dangerous because those cross-cultural models, they take the average person of that culture, and a person is more than his culture, you know, and so you really have to be careful with that. I'm not sure if I reacted well, and if it's that you wanted to point it out, but please,
I think so, because she says it's not a question, it's reality in communication, I believe. Yes, I do agree with the overreaction part. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Again, feel free to use the chat to ask us anything, especially Evelien. And if you don't mind helping us with our poll, it's just 5 quick questions. It takes less than a minute. And then Berada just want to leave us with how to contact us in case you want to reach out with any diversity or corporate training need for your company or for yourself.
Absolutely. In meeting more specialists, field, whether it's something you do yourself within your organizations, or you work with other organizations or clients, for example. So just to summarize a little bit, so Filmdu ourselves, we have already also the film catalog. So that's why we're not just an edtech or education company. We ourselves come with one of the world's largest supply of films. So based on your requirement, we can actually curate and find films relevant to topics you're looking for. So for example, multicultural communication, diversity, leadership, how to be a successful, provide successful customer service. But of course, given the strength of our international film catalog, areas such as multicultural communications, diversity and inclusion training, that's a very strong area that we can really help with. And of course, you've seen our EdTech tool ourselves. That's actually a platform that actually you yourself can use to create any game and lesson on any film and video. So actually you could use it also on your own video. If some of you have your own videos in-house, you can also use it on YouTube's video or Vimeo's video as well. And also, of course, Filmdu's own film. But it's a really flexible tool so that you can use to create your own games and lessons. And of course, finally, we are now working with experts such as Evelien, and we of course have Julio in-house, but we also have many growing team of curriculum designers, experts in anthropology, in communications, and diversity, who can also help create the lessons and games specifically for your organization or for the organizations you work with. So we are very interested in partnering, finding out more how we could collaborate, potentially explore synergies. So please do get in touch with myself or with Julio. Julio's email is julio@filmdu.com. Mine is ws@filmdu.com. And I'll leave this on for a few seconds, just so you can collect our details. But otherwise, we'd love to have any last questions before wrapping up.
And good early morning to you, Katie.
Yeah.
From Alaska.
Oh, she sent me a message that she tried and she would try to come. So I'm really happy that you are here, Katie. Thank you so much.
We, of course, we have a recording of this so that we can also share it, and you can share with your friends or colleagues if they weren't able to attend today's session. We have
a good lunch, Carmen.
Yeah.
And share.
Oh, we have one question. Can you play the game on your own? Yes, of course, of course. Maybe it didn't come out clear, but actually the game can be played in self-learning mode as homework or self-study. But you, of course, wouldn't have the other players with you. But yes, so any lesson the game created can be assigned to trainees, students to watch in their own time or for homework.
Thank you, Charles.
And in fact, Katie from Alaska, it's really interesting because Katie, Carmen, and me, we are also. Katie is teaching in Alaska, and she's also busy to teach in an intercultural group now with young people, and it's really interesting to see on the Facebook group what's happening. So, yeah, thank you for the possibility also to be in that Facebook group, Katie.
Oh, brilliant. Like I said, feel free to always reach out to myself, Julio, or of course, Evelien, for any additional information or if you're interested in finding out more. Checking that we've covered all the questions from the attendees today.
We have a really interesting quote: society and life are so complex, I can only ask questions. Riet sent that over.
That's a very interesting quote, indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, one last question. What do you think is the biggest value of using films as a medium for teaching intercultural communications? How does it compare with other mediums?
I think,
No, go on, Evelien, please.
Yeah. I think it's really important because about communication, there's also a lot of non-verbal communication, and there's also a lot of differences between cultures. So you get the whole package, going to another culture will be also fine, but it's difficult to go to all cultures. So that's a great way to learn. And with film, you can repeat as much as you want. That's also great. Yeah, that's my opinion. So yeah, I don't know if you want.
It's definitely more multimodal, right? So it's not, if you're trying to learn, especially culture, how can you just learn on a piece of paper or over vocabulary or even an image? Although that's better, but you have to see it, hear it, believe it, feel it, be immersed in it, and film or video is the closest we have to capturing that essence in life form, and that's why in terms of learning cultural context, environmental context, it's still the best way. Kate's made a really interesting comment. Yes. You're brilliant. Well, I'll just put my email here on the chat as well, just so in case anyone didn't catch the screen. So that's my email, and I'll put down Julio's email.
I will put mine also, but if you are losing my email, there's only one Evelien Verschroeven on the world, so it's easy to find me. But here you are. Thank you.
I'll add my LinkedIn link as well, because sometimes it might be easier to just add me on LinkedIn as well. So feel free. I think on that note, we are. Thank you again for taking your time out on Tuesday and Tuesday lunch for many of you, and look forward to keeping in touch, exploring potential synergies either for yourself or for organizations you work with, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. And of course, thank you, Evelien and Julio, but especially
Thank you so much.
Yeah, but it was great working for you. Julio is so enthusiastic. People, if you want to make a course with Julio, you will enjoy it.
It was mutual. It was super fun. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.